Hey everyone, and welcome back to this class. In this lecture, I'm going to discuss where to get the code for this course. As usual, the code for this course can be downloaded from my GitHub page, github.com/lazyprogrammer/machine-learning-examples. In order to get the code, please don't try to copy and paste it from the webpage itself. Use Git instead. I've seen students do this in the past and it frequently causes errors. So just use the command git clone and then my GitHub URL. Also, I would recommend not forking the repo, as this makes it harder to get updates, and I'm updating the repo pretty much constantly, so you don't want to be stuck with an old version. In addition, some students have been confused by forked repos in the past, thinking they had found the correct repo for the course when in fact they had not. So for the sake of future students, please do not create your own fork. And if you're a student searching for the code right now, please double check that you have the correct GitHub URL and not someone else's out-of-date fork. As most of you know, one of my #1 rules for learning is to write your own code. Machine learning is all about programming. This is not a philosophy course. Everything you learn in this course involves hands-on work. So whether you are deriving equations or writing code to implement those equations, you're going to be very hands-on. You should never find yourself asking, how would such and such work theoretically? If you ever have a question like that, it is always better to answer it just by writing some code and doing an experiment. Machine learning is about experimentation, not philosophy. Remember that the pattern we are always going to follow is to go from theory to code. First, we discuss what we are doing, that's the theory. Then we implement that thing in code, that's the code. So you should never be confused about what we are doing in the code, because we are always just doing the thing that we just talked about. Sometimes I come across students who try to start the course by watching a lecture in the middle of the course. Usually they end up lost. I don't want you to get lost. So most of the time, if you want to make sense of what you're watching, you have to watch the lectures in order. The lectures build on each other and they tell a story. If you don't watch them in order, it's kind of like trying to read a book by picking random pages in the book. Of course, if you're looking for something specific, that might be a good strategy, but for most of you, that's not going to be the case. And remember that whatever we're doing in the code is not coming from nowhere. We're just doing what we said we were going to do in the previous lecture. Ideally, you're always trying to code by yourself, so if you want some tips for how to get started with that, I would recommend watching How to Code by Yourself in the appendix. Finally, I want to remind you that whatever coding environment you use, it is 100% your choice. A lot of people tell me they like Jupyter Notebook. Well, if you like Notebook, then you should be using Notebook. Remember that Python code is Python code, no matter where it is. There's no difference between Python code in Jupyter Notebook and Python code in the console. The same Python code would work the same in both environments. Remember that in these videos, all you're seeing is just code on the screen. There's no difference between me using a text editor or even putting the code in slides. You can't touch it or interact with it anyway. So it doesn't matter what I use, because that's not suggestive of what you should use. If you find the terminal very scary or intimidating, then maybe you don't want to use it. That's okay. Of course, the terminal is actually very useful, so I would recommend working your way up to being comfortable with it. But for this course, when you're writing Python code, you can choose your own environment. The same code works everywhere.